All right, so a lot of you guys have emailed us after Hurricane Irma and messaged us and asked if we could talk to Gary Fretz, who is our expert on previous conversations on this channel, and ask him about the yacht market post Irma and with all the destruction that we've seen in the photos and whatnot. What implications, if any, is that going to have in both the near-term and kind of the more long-term markets? This is beyond my expertise, so we're just going to jump straight over to Gary and have him answer because he's familiar with this area and familiar what happens when you see this kind of destruction.
Ryan, thanks for the question, and it's definitely a good question. What happened in Tortola, where 70% of all the charters in the world happen every year, is pretty much total devastation. The moorings in Sunsail, which are really now one company, lost 50 to 70% of their boats. At least 70 are damaged beyond use at this point. Now they can fix some of them. And Dream Yacht Charters, which is the largest privately held company in the world, because Mooring Sunsail is a public company, had 91 boats under management in Tortola prior to the storm, and after the storm they have one. And so, yeah, TMM, they had 40 boats under management, none. They have a few on the way from the factory that were just coming there anyway, so they will be able to honor some charters this winter, but pretty much all the charter companies lost most of their fleets. Now, St. Martin was also in the path of Irma, and 15% of the charters in the world take place there, and there was total devastation there. I don't really have any numbers of losses from there yet, but there were a lot of boats lost. In fact, I believe that somewhere around 50% of the catamarans on the used market have been destroyed since the storm. And so that big decrease in supply has caused a big problem for some buyers who were waiting around for maybe a dip in prices like we usually see at the end of the summer, early fall, but it's not happening because another thing that we heard is that the major charter companies contacted the new boat manufacturers, and Lagoon, for example, on their popular models was sold out through November of 2018. Leopard was sold out through March of 2019 before the storm. And the charter companies went to them and said, now, you know, we're your best customers because we order the most boats from you, so we need a favor from you, and the favor is we need all of your production slots that are available for the following 1 to 2 years. And so the charter companies have already jumped in there and locked up those production slots. So unless you are going to order a new boat from a dealer who had previously had orders with the factories, you probably can't even get a new boat till 2020. Now, that is going to put a squeeze not only on new boats, but used boats as well. And what I've seen in the last 3 days is a lot of smart buyers have jumped in to the market and bought boats or made deals subject to the usual conditions, which are survey and sea trial. And so I myself have sold 3 boats just in the last couple days, and I know some of my friendly competitors have sold 8 to 10 each, with multiple offices around the world. So this storm has caused a big squeeze on the market, and prices will only go up from here because supplies are probably 50% of what they were before the storm, and there's nothing to replace them. Now, some of the charter companies will bring boats over from their other bases in the Mediterranean, in the Pacific, and some of them, like I know of a German company and a French company that had offered some boats for sale that survived the storm, but now they've decided to keep them because they can't honor their charters, so they're going to take them off market and work them for another couple years until new boat inventories can replenish their supply of boats.
Yeah, it's definitely had a big impact. One of the other questions people were asking is with regard to salvage Like, is there an opportunity here to jump in for salvage, or are these boats so long gone that the average buyer can't get to them, or
Well, there are salvage opportunities, and I used to be in this business. I used to buy hurricane wrecked boats, and I owned a boatyard in Palm Beach, and we'd take them there and fix them up or try and do them close to where they were damaged. And but here's the problem with that. It's really financially very risky because a lot of these contractors will give you an estimate, and they are experts at this game that I'm going to describe to you. And what they do is they say, yeah, it's going to be $10,000 to fix that hole in the side of the boat, and it'll take us 6 weeks or whatever. And then what happens is they get into the job. You've hauled the boat out. They're working on this repair, and then they come to you and they say, "Oh, geez, when we gave you that estimate, we hadn't, actually dug into the hull and seen what's actually in there, and so now we realize, oh, there's more to this, and so it's going to cause us a lot more, like double, to fix that problem." And so now your boat's hauled out. They have a mechanic's lien on it. It's not easy to take it somewhere else, and you're kind of stuck, and these contractors play this game all the time. So you see, it's very risky with these sort of things. The other thing is when you're buying components for the boats, like the engine manufacturers know what's going on, know there's going to be a lot of demand for new engines and new mass and whatever, and so they raise prices on you. And it's very difficult, even for a professional, to estimate your costs and keep them to a reasonable level. So a lot of people end up spending a lot more money than they think on these boats. So I'm just saying it's more difficult to do it yourself than it used to be, and it's financially dangerous.
Yeah.
In my opinion. And I really wouldn't do it now. I've seen too many of these games being played, and
right.
I've learned the hard way. This is dangerous stuff. I mean, you might get lucky and get something good, but generally, a lot of the boatyard owners and professionals who know how to fix fiberglass damage and things like that, they're on the scene right now. They're there with the insurance adjusters. They're looking over everything, and they're finding the best deals for themselves. In some cases, they'll flip those deals over and just make a little money and be done with them. And so, but you're helping them make a little money. So it's really difficult to do this unless you're already set up.
Right. So as a normal average buyer who doesn't play this game day in and day out, the cards are stacked against you for it to go super smoothly. People can give it a shot. People might get lucky, but they need to be wary. They need to do their homework. They need to expect to pay a lot more than what it looks like at first blush.
Yes, absolutely. Because some of the things that happen to a boat that's had water intrusion is that it affects the electrical system. Maybe not right away, but let's say you get a boat that was briefly underwater. That is, maybe a piling impaled the hull. It went down. They were able to raise it a day or two later, and then things might work for a while, but then all of a sudden weird little problems crop up here and there, and it's just because of this water intrusion is really serious, and it causes big problems. So I mean, I've seen a few people who, for example, can rebuild or install a new diesel, who find these boats that have relatively minor damage that were sold by the insurance companies, and they may have a chance to do something, but you have to be able to store the boat cost effectively also, or get it back to where you can store it, because these projects can take a lot longer than you think.
Yeah. I think some people are kind of wary that they know, like you said before, that the market's going to dry up. I think it'll probably be news to a certain amount of people that, oh yeah, new boats are going to dry up, which is also going to increase demand on used boats. But then there's really no respite and hoping that you can get cheap salvages out there. Even if you could get a cheap salvage, it's not going to be a cheap boat. Is there any good news for people who are trying to buy boats, or is it just kind of a bad situation?
Well, here's what I would do. If I had been planning on cruising this winter, I would look in Europe because their season's ending. And so the owners over there are faced with storing them over the winter with, if they were chartering them, they'll get no income over the winter. And so they'll have pretty heavy carrying costs. And so I would shop over there. Sometimes in the Pacific, we see some deals. I looked the other day, but I didn't really find any enticing deals. That's a really thin market. So, sometimes you see great deals and other times you don't, because it just depends on how many buyers are out there competing for the boats. And sometimes the boat will sit on the market a long time there, and you can find good deals. Now, also in the lower Caribbean, there were boats that escaped damage. And if you can find a seller who's kind of sleeping, so to speak, who doesn't realize that the buyers are, out there taking action now, if you can get in there soon before they get a lot of calls, you might still find a good deal down there. So I say quick action now will save a lot of money, because the market is just kind of waking up to this fact that so many used boats were destroyed, and it's got to put upward pressure on the boats. So, I would act now and look in Europe. We can get boats delivered from the Western Med to the Bahamas, for example, for $16,000 all inclusive. So, you might find a good deal over there. Be wary of boats in certain countries. It's kind of difficult to do business in some countries like Greece, for example. And sometimes Turkey can be a little difficult unless, we're dealing with English-speaking people that do business the way we do. Because over there, they have a different mentality about doing business. Caveat emptor, let the buyer beware, is a very important business precept over there. And they tend to not be as fair to the buyers as we are over here, where I think in the U.S., because of our legal system, we have a more balanced system that's fair to both parties, as opposed to the Eastern Med, where you have these sharks circling around all the time.
Yeah. If you were shopping for a boat, there could still potentially be deals, but you need to act as quickly as you can, and you need to probably turn over more rocks and maybe search a little further afield than you would have otherwise.
Exactly. Timing is everything. We've seen some boats sell recently for very reasonable prices. But the other day, I was looking at one of the better deals out there, which Mooring Sunsail had 5 Leopard 39 owner versions from 2012 and 2013. And those sold out like overnight. I mean, literally overnight. Because, they're good boats, they're owner versions, so they're in bigger demand. And the buyers that were sitting on the fence just finally said, well, we might as well take the plunge, let's make the decision and go. And I think they made a very smart decision, because you can't find them now today. That was the perfect couples boat for even a beginner couple, because it wasn't too big, it was easy to handle, even in storms, and had enough room where you could live aboard and have plenty of room to store your stuff and happily sail the 7 seas.
Yeah. So it's going to take a few years for the average consumer to be able to start receiving new boats. Like, how long do you, just rough gut estimate, would you think that this kind of upward pricing pressure might last? Is it going to be a year, 2 years, 5 years?
Definitely 2 years. Maybe longer. It depends on how fast the factories can replace the totaled vessels, because when they can replace them and when more boats can phase out of charter, you'll see the supplies increase. But I see firmness in prices for at least 2 years, maybe a little longer. It's hard to say.
And I guess for people like, if you were really shooting for a 45-foot catamaran and now it's priced out, maybe you can consider a 40-foot catamaran.
Yes.
At a greater price, but it doesn't necessarily mean people's dreams are ruined. It just means they maybe have to go with smaller boats that are going to cost as much as the bigger boats do now, or before the
Yeah.
storm.
A lot of people, when they see the room you get on a 40-footer, realize that, we could make that work, because a 40-foot catamaran actually has the same interior space and deck space as about a 55-foot monohull. And so I've had many a buyer whose dream boat was, say, the Lagoon 440 or the 450, but they couldn't quite afford it. And I said, well, let's just go look at some Lagoon 400s and 420s and 421s. And they looked at them and they went, wow, there's a lot of room. We could live with this, and we can certainly live with the price. And they ended up buying those models instead, and they're happily cruising today. And I think for a couple's boat, or even with 4 people, those models work very well.
Yeah. All right. Well, if people have like follow-up questions that they want to send your way, maybe somebody's really keen on researching salvage more, and you were in that business, so you can give them a little bit more insight. Maybe they have some skills. Maybe they have some people who can work on the boat. They can, I'm sure, reach out to you.
Yeah, I do run into some salvage boats. My sister's an insurance adjuster, but the best thing to do is send me an email and put in the subject line salvage boats or salvage yachts. And then, I may not get anything for a month or two, but when I get them, if I can easily find your email by putting that in the subject line, I'll be able to get back to you and say, okay, here's what we have right now,
Yeah.
This and this and this, it's located here. I have pictures of the damage and so on, and this is what we have.
Okay. And for people who are, who feel like, oh, we need to hurry up and go ahead and buy, they can also reach out to you.
Yes, and I would suggest going after boats in the lower Caribbean now, or the Med, especially the Western Med, because their season's ending, and those sellers are more anxious, and some of them may be still sort of sleeping, meaning, they're not fully aware of the effect that this hurricane has had on the market, and, they might not get so bulled up, so to speak, on their pricing. So if you act now, I think you'll be a lot happier than if you just wait.
I will post your email down below. It's what? Can you say it out loud?
Yeah, my email address is bigyachts. That's BIGYACHTS @gmail.com. bigyachts@gmail.com. Yeah, shoot me an email. Let me know what you're interested in, and I'll put you in my database and see if I can help.
All right, guys. Hope that was helpful. If you have any follow-up questions, or if there's a question we didn't cover here, put them in the comments below, and I'll relay them to Gary. And if there's enough, we'll do a follow-up video. But if there's not, we'll just respond in line in the comments section. All right. Hope that answers your questions, and I hope this was helpful.